Welcome back to AI for the Humanities, the channel where we take artificial intelligence seriously as a humanistic problem, not just a technological one. I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to reintroduce you to Sarveen Talamai, one of my students from the internship course, and a cognitive science major, which makes her a uniquely positioned thinker for the subject she's bringing us today. Sarveen has been experimenting with Flux, a powerful AI image generator with more than 12 billion parameters. And what started as curiosity about a tool quickly became something much richer, a structured inquiry into how AI interprets abstract thought, reconstructs historical memory, and represents cultural identity through images. We talk a lot on this channel about language models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, but image generation is its own frontier with its own promises and pitfalls. When an AI generates text, we can read critically, compare sources, and identify gaps. But when it generates an image, there's something about the visual that can feel more authoritative, more real, even when it's not. A generated image of an historical event can feel like a photograph. A generated image of a cultural tradition can feel like documentation. And that's precisely why Sarveen's critical approach here matters so much. She's going to take us through 3 interconnected experiments: how Flux visualizes abstract psychological theories, how it reconstructs a lost historical document, and how it handles cultural representation across 2 very different contexts. Along the way, she draws on peer-reviewed research to frame what she's finding, and ends with concrete, practical recommendations for anyone using AI image generation in education or research. This is careful, thoughtful work, and I'm excited for you to see it. Let's go to Sarveen.
Hey guys, my name is Sarveen Talaminai, and for the past few months, I've been experimenting with Flux AI image generator. I'm going to be talking about what I've discovered and the testing I've done with AI in the humanities. As I mentioned in my last video, Flux is an AI image generator that transforms text prompts into images. With 12 billion parameters, Flux has an impressive capacity to understand language and generate highly detailed visuals. So let's try to test Flux's ability to comprehend more challenging concepts. As a part of my research and as a cognitive science major, I got curious about how AI interprets and visualizes abstract psychological theories. To explore this, I experimented with Flux to see how it visually represents complex psychological concepts. So the first psychological concept I decided to test out was cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is defined as a psychological state of mental discomfort arising from holding conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors. For example, a person who knows smoking is harmful but continues to smoke may experience cognitive dissonance because they know it's bad but they continue to do it anyway. So let's try to put this into Flux and see what it generates. And for this first image, I'm going to leave all the settings alone. Okay, so this is a pretty good representation, I feel like, of cognitive dissonance. I feel like if someone were to look at this image knowing the definition, they'd be like, okay, like, this can represent, like, 2 conflicting beliefs. Like, it doesn't explicitly say it, but the way that AI interprets this psychological concept, and with all the information it knows about it, it's able to create an image, like, symbolizing it. So I think this did a pretty good job with that. My second theory or like prompt that I wanted to try was Sternberg's triangular theory of love. This theory suggests that love is comprised of three components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. These components interact to form different types of love, ranging from infatuation to consummate love. So if we were to test this out, just get rid of that. Sternberg's and for the sake of testing out the settings of Flux, I'm going to be using the same seed number as the previous prompt that I used for psychological concepts to make it look similar. Okay, so with this one, it's a little more complicated. It's not as like direct or like specific as the last one, because I feel like that one was a more abstract, like psychological theory or abstract idea of psychology, whereas this is like a theory, and it doesn't explicitly say like what the components are of this theory. It just kind of gives you a triangle. So I think Flux had like a harder time with this one for sure, but it's definitely interesting to see like how it creates an image based on the prompt I gave it, because I was pretty like specific with Sternberg's triangular theory of love, but it's interesting. This experiment reminded me of the article AI-Empowered Imagery Writing, integrating AI-generated imagery into digital mental health service. Wow, that's a long title. The authors argue that AI-generated images can help visualize internal experiences and support therapeutic practices, such as expressive writing and wisdom therapy. Their approach emphasizes how AI can act as a creative partner in helping people externalize and process emotions. From my own small-scale test, I can see the potential and limitations of this technology. While Flux produced a powerful interpretation of cognitive dissonance, it struggled with a more structured concept like the triangular theory of love. And I've like tested this out with other like concepts, like a simpler model like the cognitive dissonance, and then another like more complex theory, and it has the same issue every time. This contrast raises important questions about how AI systems interpret abstract ideas versus ordered models, and how these differences might influence therapeutic applications in the future. So let's take a step further and explore how Flux handles historical reconstruction, specifically how it visualizes past events that we don't really have photographs of or direct imagery. As a part of my research, I wanted to see how AI could help us reimagine historical moments based on contextual descriptions alone. This has a huge potential in anywhere we want to bring distant or lost history into life. So, the event in history I wanted to experiment with was the burning of Persepolis, circa 330 BC. If you're not familiar with this event, after conquering Persia, Alexander the Great allegedly set fire to Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Sorry if I butchered that. The reasons are debated. Some say it was revenge for Persian destruction in Greece. Others say it was a drunken accident or symbolic act. It marked a tragic end to the great Persian Empire. There's no photo records of this event, obviously, but it marks a dramatic, emotional, and highly visual representation. So to start out with this, I wanted to start simple, just giving it like the event in general, the burning of Persepolis circa 330 BC. So let's start with that first. And for this one, I'm going to use a random seed number. Okay, this one did a pretty good job. Like, obviously, it shows like a building in history, like set on fire. There are people around. Like, again, if you're familiar with the this moment in history, like if you were to see this image, I mean, it's a little broad, but you could definitely like put it together. I feel like so. I feel like Flux did a good job with this. Um, but for my next prompt, I wanted to try like being more specific, like really describing what the event entails. So I'm gonna go with ancient in flames at night. And this is like based on research. Like this is what people described this event to be like. So okay. Let me just do some spell check. Okay, and I'm gonna use the same seed number. Okay, so this basically gave me the same image as before, just like with less people, I guess, but I do notice it's a little more detailed as the last one, like in terms of like quality, but I didn't even change any of the settings, so yeah, this is basically like the same exact image that came up previously. This experiment reminded me of an article I read called Immersive History, the AI Prodigy Project. This piece explores how tools like Flux can help educators and researchers create immersive visual experiences of historical events that otherwise live only in text. It opens up a new way to engage students or the public by giving them something tangible to imagine from the past. But this also brought up some clear limitations. Even when given a richer prompt, Flux still tended to repeat certain visual patterns or overly clean and romanticized representations of history. And while it was able to capture mood and setting, it couldn't reflect the deeper historical nuance. What this shows is that prompt design really matters. The more sensory, spatial, and emotional detail you give, the better AI performs. I see real value in this tool, not as a replacement for historical research, but as a creative partner in making lost memories visible again. Because imagine like the lengths we can go in like creating moments in history that were lost, that like we have no visual representation of, no one really knows like what it looked like, and AI can just create an image to like help you visualize it. I think that's pretty cool. So now that we've seen how Flux handles historical recreation, let's talk about the ethical and cultural implications of using AI in this kind of work. When I tested Flux's ability to depict emotion across cultural contexts, I noticed something important. So I gave two prompts: a joyful family in a reunion in rural China and a joyful family reunion in rural Brazil. I tried this once before, but I want to show you guys what I found by going through it again. So, a joyful family. Okay, let's use a different seed number this time. Okay, so again, if you were to look at this, I feel like you'd be able to like tell what this is. Like, you can definitely see like a joyful family, like in rural, like this like architecture definitely signifies like a rural type of setting. Like you can see like the culture aspects, like the lantern, the writing. They're sitting at a table like with tea and like food, whatever. Their clothing as well. So let's see how it does with rural Brazil now. Okay, so once again, you can definitely see like Flux is able to create these kind of images and you'd be able to like tell. You can see some cultural aspects here as well with like the building they're in, like the grass, the clothes they're wearing, stuff like that. Both images were positive and accurate on the surface. The Chinese reunion showed a family at a table with tea and traditional housing, while the Brazilian one showed different architecture but like similar visuals. But this made me ask, does AI really understand culture, or is it just recycling visual stereotypes? Because tea and lanterns, like for China, and like fieldy, like hut-like structure for Brazil, these details might seem harmless, but in an academic or therapeutic setting, they risk flattening complex traditions into visual clichés, and that could be a problem. This directly connects to an article I referenced in my research called "Emotion Perception Across Cultures: The Role of Cognitive Mechanisms." The article emphasizes that even humans interpret emotion differently across cultures, based on cognitive frameworks shaped by upbringing and social context. So if humans already struggle with that nuance, AI trained by biased data struggles even more, and without the ability to self-correct unless guided. And something similar happened when I asked AI to recreate historical moments. With my experiment with the burning of Persepolis, even when I added detail, context-rich prompts, Flux tended to create images that felt cinematic, like scenes from a movie, not a complex, like, contested historical event. And that brings up an important ethical question. Whose version of history is AI showing? Is it driven by Hollywood imagery, textbook illustrations, Eurocentric perspectives? When people, especially students who are like more impressionable, see these images, there's a risk that they'll treat them as fact, not interpretation. They could unintentionally reinforce historical inaccuracies or erase alternate perspectives. And this is where, like, this article that I referenced earlier, Immersive History, the AI Prodigy Project, comes in. The article stresses that we should pair AI visuals with critical literacy. In other words, we need to teach people not to just look at the image, but ask what's being emphasized, what's being left out. Could this image marginalize a different perspective or culture? So it's really important to like question what you're putting out there. So with my experience with AI in mind, here's a few practices I'd recommend for anyone using AI in humanities research or education. Always contextualize the output. Make it clear that the image is an AI interpretation, not an objective truth. So really make sure people know, like, this isn't necessarily fact. This is just, like, a useful tool in, like, helping us visualize what I want to put out there. Because, again, people could, like, take it as fact and be like, oh, like, use it for, like, a research project and be like, oh, this is what this thing looks like, and that's fact. But in actuality, it's just, like, AI making an image for you. Diversify your prompts, be culturally specific, avoid vague, generalized language that invites stereotypes. So this one really goes into the last example I brought up with the rural family in China and rural family in Brazil. like when I gave it that very broad, like, and I did that on purpose. I was very broad with it to see how AI like interprets it. But if you want to use AI like usefully, I recommend that you like be more specific, like really like put in the words you use really matter. Like don't just put in broad concepts like that. Like make sure to like really be specific with it so that it can avoid like making those kind of stereotypes. And again, AI is not perfect at all. So if it messes up, make sure to like go back and do it again. Like really like hone in what you're trying to like make with AI, because it is capable. It's just it has some discrepancies. The last recommendation I had was invite reflection. Ask viewers or students what's missing, whose voice is being represented or excluded. So when you make an AI, this is like what I've been doing all semester. Like once the Flux AI image generator like makes an image for me, I sit there for a while and I think about like what it actually created, and like, you know, the implications that it has when it comes to AI and the humanities. Because AI is, you know, it's a computer, it's not a human. So it definitely is not perfect when it comes to stuff like that. So it's really important for you to like think about how it's making these images for you, or anything, not just images, songs, like text, like anything related to AI. Make sure you like reflect on it for a little bit and be like, what is it doing? But in the end, AI is a really powerful tool, but it's only as thoughtful as the human guiding it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was insightful and helpful for anyone who is experimenting with AI or is interested in it. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarveen, for such a rich and multi-layered investigation. What I find most compelling about your work is that you approach Flux not as a user, but as a critic as well. Someone asking not only what does this tool produce, but what does what it produces reveal? The three areas you explored, psychological concepts, historical reconstruction, and cultural representation, each illuminate a different dimension of the same underlying problem. AI image generators learn from patterns in their training data, and those patterns inevitably carry the biases, blind spots, and assumptions baked into the visual culture that dominates the internet. This tool, with over 12 billion parameters, is still fundamentally a reflection of human choices about what to include, what to label, and what to value. The distinction you drew between abstract concepts and structured theoretical models is a genuinely interesting insight, and one that connects directly to your background in cognitive science. Flux could capture the feeling of cognitive dissonance because emotional and affective states have rich visual histories in art, advertising, and media. Tension, fracture, contradiction. These have been painted, photographed, and illustrated for centuries. But Sternberg's triangular theory of love is an intellectual model, a diagram of relationships between components. It doesn't have a visual tradition the same way emotions do, and so the AI had little to work with from beyond the literal shape of a triangle. That gap between what AI can picture and what it can conceptualize is something worth sitting with, especially for those of us who teach in disciplines where the ideas are often more important than any image of them. The historical reconstruction experiment raises what I think is one of the most pressing questions in AI in education today. Whose version of the past does AI show us? Sarveen observed that even with a richly detailed, historically grounded prompt, Flux produced something that felt cinematic, aestheticized, romanticized, drawn from a visual vocabulary shaped by Hollywood epics and Western art history, rather than complex historical scholarship. That's not a neutral representation. And when students encounter that image without critical framing, it can quietly reinforce a very narrow, very particular way of seeing the past. The cultural representation findings offer a similarly important lesson. Tea and red lanterns for China, sunlight and open fields for Brazil. These details might seem positive and even accurate on the surface, yet they flatten the enormous complexity of living cultures into a handful of recognizable visual cues. As Sarveen connected to Engelman and Post-Saigon's research on cross-cultural emotion perception, even humans struggle to read culture accurately across difference. AI, trained on data that overrepresents certain perspectives, struggles even more, and without lived experience to push back against its own patterns. The 3 practices Sarveen recommended are worth repeating for anyone using AI image generation in the classroom or in research. Always contextualize AI output as interpretation rather than facts. Be culturally specific in your prompts to resist stereotype, and build in structured reflection, asking what's missing, whose perspective is centered, and what might be distorted. These aren't just tips for image generation. They're principles for responsible AI use across every medium. As always, we'll close with a Suno AI song, and I'd love to hear your prompt ideas for future outros in the comments. All of Sarveen's resources and sources are linked in the description below. If this episode made you look at AI-generated images a little differently, that's exactly the point. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we'll see you next time on AI for the Humanities.
I type the words, cognitive dissonance, watch the machine find its own relevance. 2 paths colliding, a fracture of light. It captured the feeling, but not the fight. Then I asked for love, triangles and all, and the image it gave me was just walls. It knows the look of things, not what they mean. It draws a surface of what it has seen, pattern and pixel, data and dream. But is any of it what it seems? Seeing machines, trained on a world filtered through other eyes. Seeing machines, what they picture isn't always what it is. Every image is a choice, every choice leaves out a voice. Seeing machines show us what they've learned to see. I asked for Persepolis, burning and vast, a night of fire from the ancient past. It gave me a movie, all romance and glow, but history's messier than the images show. Whose version of the past does the training data hold? Whose stories get pictures and who stay untold? It knows the look of things, not what they mean. It draws a surface of what it has seen, pattern and pixel, data and dream. But is any of it what it seems? Seeing machines, trained on a world filtered through other eyes. Seeing machines, what they picture isn't always what it is. Every image is a choice, every choice leaves out a voice. Seeing machines show us what they've learned to see. Tea and lanterns, sunlight on grass, a whole culture flattened into a cliché on glass. We recognize it because we've seen it before, but recognition isn't the same as knowing more. What the algorithm learned, we taught it to learn. What it shows the world is our own mirror returned. So I changed the prompt, I added the detail, sensory, spatial, emotional, vivid and real. The image improved, not perfect but closer, which means how we ask matters. The question is the opener. Contextualize, specify, reflect, ask what's missing here. The tool is only as thoughtful as the human who steers. Seeing machines, trained on a world filtered through other eyes. Seeing machines, what they picture isn't always what it is. Every image is a choice, every choice leaves out a voice. Seeing machines show us what they've learned to see. So ask what's missing, ask whose truth it frames. The image image isn't neutral, and neither is the machine.